Let's start at the very beginning with what plant nutrition actually means. When we talk about feeding plants, we're not really feeding them food the way we think about it. Plants don't eat. They don't consume organic matter for energy like we do. Instead, plant nutrition is about supplying the right chemical elements that plants use to build their tissues and power their metabolic processes. These elements come from the soil, from water, from the air. Plants take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and then they need a specific set of mineral nutrients to make everything work. It's chemistry, really. Pure chemistry. Each element plays a specific role in the plant's cellular machinery, and without the right elements in the right amounts, that machinery breaks down. So when we feed plants, we're actually just making sure the chemical pantry is fully stocked. Now, not all nutrients are created equal. Scientists have identified 17 elements that are absolutely essential for plant growth. Essential means a plant cannot complete its life cycle without them. These 17 include the big ones like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but also lesser-known players like molybdenum and nickel. Without even one of these essential elements, a plant will show deficiency symptoms and eventually fail to reproduce. But here's where it gets interesting. There are also beneficial nutrients. Elements like silicon, sodium, cobalt, and selenium aren't required for all plants, but they can significantly improve performance. Silicon, for example, strengthens cell walls and helps plants resist pests and diseases. It's not essential in the strict scientific sense, but in practical agriculture, it can make a huge difference. Beneficial nutrients are like performance enhancers, nice to have, sometimes very helpful, but not absolutely required for survival. Let's talk about the big three: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These are your macronutrients, the ones plants need in the largest quantities. Every bag of fertilizer has 3 numbers on it. Those numbers represent N, P, and K. Nitrogen is the engine of vegetative growth. It's a core component of chlorophyll, the molecule that captures light energy. It's also in every amino acid, every protein, every enzyme. When plants have plenty of nitrogen, they grow lush and green with lots of leaves. Too little nitrogen and growth slows. Older leaves turn yellow, and the plant looks weak and pale. Phosphorus is all about energy and roots. It's part of ADP, the molecule that stores and transfers energy in cells. Phosphorus helps with root development, flowering, and seed formation. Young plants especially need adequate phosphorus to establish strong root systems. And then there's potassium. Potassium doesn't get built into plant structures like nitrogen and phosphorus do. Instead, it acts as a regulator. It controls the opening and closing of stomata, those tiny pores on leaves that manage gas exchange and water loss. Potassium improves drought tolerance, disease resistance, and overall plant vigor. It's the nutrient that helps plants handle stress. But the macronutrients aren't the only ones that matter. Calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are called secondary nutrients. They're needed in smaller amounts than N, P, and K, but they're still critical. Calcium is the structural engineer of the plant world. It's a key component of cell walls, giving them strength and rigidity. Without enough calcium, new growth becomes distorted. You see it in blossom end rot on tomatoes or tip burn in lettuce. Calcium doesn't move easily within plants, so deficiencies show up in young, growing tissues first. Magnesium is right at the heart of the chlorophyll molecule. No magnesium, no chlorophyll. No chlorophyll, no photosynthesis. Magnesium deficiencies typically appear as yellowing between the veins of older leaves, since plants will move magnesium from old growth to support new growth when supplies are tight. Sulfur is essential for protein synthesis and enzyme function. It's in 2 of the essential amino acids, cysteine and methionine. Sulfur deficiencies look a lot like nitrogen deficiencies at first glance: pale, yellowing leaves. But sulfur deficiency usually shows up in younger leaves first, while nitrogen deficiency hits the older leaves. Then we have the micronutrients: iron, zinc, manganese, boron, copper, molybdenum, chlorine, and nickel. Plants need these in tiny amounts, sometimes just parts per million, but don't let the small quantities fool you. These elements are absolutely critical, and deficiencies can crash yields fast. Iron is essential for chlorophyll synthesis and enzyme function. Without it, Leaves turn yellow while veins stay green, especially in new growth. Zinc is involved in hormone production and protein synthesis. Zinc-deficient plants are stunted with small, distorted leaves. Manganese helps with photosynthesis and nitrogen metabolism. Boron is crucial for cell wall formation and reproductive development. Without adequate boron, flowers and fruits fail to develop properly. Copper plays a role in photosynthesis and respiration. Molybdenum is needed for nitrogen fixation and nitrate reduction. Each micronutrient has its own specific job, and when one is missing, very specific symptoms appear. The interesting thing about micronutrients is that the line between deficiency and toxicity can be very narrow. A little more can quickly become too much. Here's something people often overlook. Nutrients can't get into plants without water. Water is the delivery system. Nutrients dissolve in soil water, and that solution moves into plant roots. This is why irrigation strategy matters so much. It's not just about preventing wilting. It's about maintaining the flow of nutrients from soil to roots. When soil dries out, nutrient movement slows dramatically. Even if nutrients are present in the soil, they can't reach the roots if there's no water to carry them. This is particularly important for nutrients that move by diffusion and mass flow. Overwatering can be just as problematic, though. When soil is waterlogged, oxygen levels drop and roots can't function properly. Damaged or oxygen-starved roots can't absorb nutrients efficiently, even when water is abundant. The goal is consistent soil moisture, not too wet, not too dry, creating optimal conditions for nutrient uptake. So how exactly do roots absorb nutrients? There are three main mechanisms. Mass flow is the easiest to understand. As plants transpire water through their leaves, they create a pull that draws water and dissolved nutrients from the soil into the roots. It's like sucking through a straw. Nutrients that are highly soluble and present in large amounts in the soil solution, like nitrogen and calcium, move primarily by mass flow. Diffusion is more subtle. When roots absorb nutrients from the soil solution right around them, they create a concentration gradient. The area immediately around the root becomes depleted, and nutrients from farther away diffuse toward the root to equalize the concentration. Phosphorus and potassium often move by diffusion because they're less soluble and don't move as freely with water. And then there's root interception, which is exactly what it sounds like. As roots grow through the soil, they physically contact nutrients. This is a relatively minor mechanism for most nutrients, but it contributes to overall uptake. These three processes work together constantly, invisibly, keeping nutrients flowing into the plant. Now let's talk about pH, because this is absolutely critical. Soil pH is measured on a scale from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. Most agricultural soils range from about 4.5 to 8.5. And here's the thing, pH controls nutrient availability. You can have all the right nutrients in your soil, but if the pH is wrong, those nutrients can be chemically locked up in forms plants can't use. This is especially true for micronutrients. Iron, manganese, and zinc become less available as pH rises above 7. In alkaline soils, plants can show iron deficiency even when iron is abundant. It's just not in a form the roots can absorb. On the flip side, in very acidic soils below pH 5, aluminum and manganese can become toxic and phosphorus availability drops. Most plants prefer a slightly acidic pH, somewhere between 6.0 and 7.0, because that's where the widest range of nutrients remains available. pH is the gatekeeper. It determines whether nutrients are in soluble plant-available forms or locked into insoluble compounds. Testing and adjusting pH is often the first step in correcting nutrient problems. Electrical conductivity, or EC, is another measurement that matters. EC tells you the concentration of dissolved salts in your soil or water. Fertilizers are salts. When you add them to soil or water, they dissolve into ions that conduct electricity. So measuring EC is essentially measuring fertilizer strength. Too little fertilizer in plants are nutrient-starved, but too much is actually worse. High salt concentrations in the soil solution create osmotic stress. Water moves from areas of low salt concentration to high salt concentration. If the soil solution has a higher salt concentration, than the plant's internal fluids. Water gets pulled out of the roots instead of into them. The plant essentially becomes dehydrated even though water is present. This is called fertilizer burn. Young seedlings are especially sensitive. High EC can stunt growth, burn leaf edges, and in severe cases, kill plants. Managing EC is about balance. You want enough nutrients to support growth, but not so much that salt stress becomes a problem. Regular monitoring of EC helps growers stay in that sweet spot. Finally, let's connect nutrition to photosynthesis, because this is where everything comes together. People sometimes think nutrients are what make plants grow. They're not. Light makes plants grow. Photosynthesis is the engine of growth. Plants capture light energy and use it to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars. Those sugars are the building blocks for everything else. Stems, leaves, roots, flowers, fruits. Nutrients don't create growth. Nutrients enable photosynthesis to happen efficiently. Nitrogen and magnesium are in the chlorophyll molecule. Iron and manganese are involved in the electron transport chains that capture light energy. Phosphorus is in ADP, the energy currency of cells. Sulfur is in enzymes that drive the reactions. Without proper nutrition, photosynthesis slows down or stops. But without light, it doesn't matter how much fertilizer you apply. The plant can't grow. This is why nutrient recommendations often change with light levels. A plant in full sun needs more nutrients than the same plant in shade because it's photosynthesizing at a higher rate. Nutrition and photosynthesis are inseparable. One enables the other, and both are essential for healthy, productive plants. And that brings us to the end of this first section. We've covered what plant nutrition really is, the difference between essential and beneficial nutrients, the roles of macronutrients and micronutrients, how water and roots work together to absorb nutrients, why pH and EC matter so much, and how all of this connects back to photosynthesis and growth. These are the fundamentals, the foundation everything else builds on. Understanding these concepts helps you make better decisions about fertilizing, irrigating, and managing plant health. It turns feeding plant from guesswork into informed practice. Plants talk to us. They really do. When something is wrong with the nutrition, they send visible signals through their leaves, stems, and growth patterns. These signals are what we call deficiency and toxicity symptoms. A deficiency happens when a plant doesn't have enough of a particular nutrient. The plant struggles to carry out normal functions, and specific symptoms appear depending on which nutrient is lacking. Toxicity is the opposite problem. Too much of a nutrient builds up and interferes with plant processes or blocks the uptake of other nutrients. Both deficiencies and toxicities produce stress signals, and learning to read these signals is like learning a plant's language. Nitrogen deficiency shows up as pale, yellowing leaves, starting with the oldest ones at the bottom of the plant. Growth slows, and the whole plant takes on a light green or yellow appearance. Nitrogen toxicity, on the other hand, produces dark green, lush foliage that's weak and prone to lodging and disease. Phosphorus deficiency causes dark green or purple-tinged leaves, especially in young plants, with stunted growth and poor root development. Iron deficiency creates interveinal chlorosis. The tissue between the veins turns yellow while the veins stay green, appearing first in the youngest leaves. Each nutrient has its own signature, its own pattern of symptoms. The key is learning to recognize these patterns and respond appropriately. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Not all nutrients behave the same way inside the plant. Some nutrients are mobile, meaning the plant can move them from older tissues to younger, growing tissues when supplies run short. Other nutrients are mobile. Once they're incorporated into a specific part of the plant, they're stuck there. This distinction determines where deficiency symptoms show up first. Mobile nutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium. When these nutrients are deficient, the plant pulls them from older leaves to support new growth. So deficiency symptoms appear first in the lower, older leaves. The plant is essentially sacrificing old growth to keep new growth alive. This is why nitrogen deficiency always starts at the bottom of the plant and works its way up. Immobile nutrients like calcium, iron, boron, and sulfur can't be relocated once they're in place. When these nutrients are deficient, new growth suffers immediately because the plant can't pull reserves from older leaves. Calcium deficiency causes distorted, necrotic new leaves and growing tips. Iron deficiency shows up as chlorosis in young leaves. Understanding mobility helps you identify which nutrient is the problem just by observing where symptoms appear first. It's diagnostic gold. Let's shift gears and talk about different growing systems, because nutrient availability changes dramatically depending on whether you're growing in soil or going soilless. Soil is a complex system. It's not just dirt. It's a living matrix of mineral particles, organic matter, water, air, and billions of microorganisms. Soil has something called buffering capacity. The clay particles and organic matter in soil can hold on to nutrients and release them gradually. This buffering effect means soil is more forgiving. If you over-fertilize a bit, the soil can absorb the excess. If you under-fertilize, the soil can release stored nutrients. But soil also has limitations. Nutrients can get tied up in unavailable forms. pH issues are harder to correct. Disease pathogens can persist in soil for years. Now compare that to hydroponics, growing plants in nutrient solution with no soil at all. In hydroponics, you have total control. You mix exactly the nutrients you want at exactly the concentrations you choose. Nutrient availability is immediate, but there's no buffering. If you make a mistake with your nutrient solution, plants feel it immediately. Too strong and you get salt stress. Too weak and growth slows instantly. Cocoa coir falls somewhere in between. It's a soilless medium made from coconut husks. It holds water and air well, but has almost no inherent nutrients and minimal buffering. Cocoa growers fertigation with every watering, similar to hydroponics, but the physical medium provides more stability than pure water culture. Each system has trade-offs between control and forgiveness. Chelation is one of those technical terms that sounds complicated, but is actually quite simple and incredibly important. Chelation is a process where a nutrient ion, especially a micronutrient metal, is bound to an organic molecule that keeps it soluble and plant available. The word comes from the Greek word for claw. The organic molecule literally grabs onto the metal ion and holds it. This is especially important for micronutrients like iron, zinc, manganese, and copper. In their free ionic form, these metals can react with other elements in the soil or water and precipitate out, forming insoluble compounds that plant roots can't absorb. This is a huge problem in high pH soils where iron, for example, quickly converts to iron oxide, basically rust, which plants can't use. Chelated micronutrients resist this precipitation. The chelating agent keeps the metal in solution, even in challenging pH conditions. Common chelating agents include EDTA, DTPA, and EDDHA, each with different stability ranges. EDTA chelated iron, for instance, remains available even in alkaline soils up to pH 9 or 10. Chelated nutrients cost more than non-chelated forms, but in situations where pH is high or soil chemistry is problematic, chelation makes a difference between nutrients being available and being locked out. It's an investment in nutrient stability and plant access. Soil isn't sterile. It's teeming with life. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, a single teaspoon of healthy soil can contain billions of microorganisms. Many of these microbes play crucial roles in nutrient cycling. They convert nutrients from unavailable forms into forms plants can use. Take nitrogen, for example. Organic matter in soil contains nitrogen, but it's locked up in complex proteins and organic molecules. Plants can't absorb these. Soil bacteria and fungi decompose the organic matter, breaking down proteins and releasing ammonium. Other bacteria then convert ammonium to nitrate through a process called nitrification. Plants readily absorb both ammonium and nitrate. Without these microbes, the nitrogen in organic matter would stay locked up and unavailable. Mycorrhizal fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, extending thread-like hyphae far into the soil. These hyphae access phosphorus and other nutrients that roots alone couldn't reach, and the fungi transfer these nutrients to the plant in exchange for sugars. Some bacteria can even solubilize rock phosphate, releasing phosphorus from mineral forms that would otherwise be completely unavailable. Other microbes produce organic acids and enzymes that release nutrients from soil particles. In soil-based systems, This biological nutrient cycling is absolutely essential. It's one of the reasons healthy, biologically active soil outperforms sterile or degraded soil even when fertilizer inputs are the same. The microbes are working as unpaid nutrient managers. Modern agriculture increasingly uses fertigation, delivering nutrients through the irrigation system. Instead of broadcasting dry fertilizer across a field and hoping for rain to dissolve and move it, fertigation injects liquid fertilizer directly into irrigation water. This approach offers tremendous precision and efficiency. You can adjust nutrient concentrations daily, or even multiple times per day based on crop growth stage and environmental conditions. Nutrients are delivered exactly where roots are actively growing. There's minimal waste from runoff or leaching. Fertigation works with drip systems, sprinklers, and even greenhouse irrigation. In high-value crops like vegetables and fruits, fertigation allows growers to fine-tune nutrition to maximize quality and yield. You can reduce nitrogen before harvest to improve flavor and shelf life. You can boost potassium during fruit development to enhance size and sugar content. This level of control simply isn't possible with traditional dry fertilizer applications. Fertigation also reduces labor costs. There's no need for heavy equipment to spread fertilizer or for workers to hand apply it. The irrigation system does the work. As water becomes scarcer and input costs rise, fertigation represents a smarter, more sustainable approach to plant nutrition. It's farming with precision rather than approximation. When it comes to fertilizers, people get fixated on big numbers. A 20-20-20 fertilizer must be better than October 10th 10, right? Not necessarily. What matters more than absolute nutrient levels is the ratio between nutrients. Plants need nutrients in specific proportions. If those proportions are badly out of balance, you get problems even if total nutrient levels are high. Think of it like baking. A cake recipe needs flour, sugar, eggs, and butter in the right ratios. Doubling the sugar but not the flour doesn't give you a better cake. It gives you a mess. Plant nutrition works the same way. A leafy green crop needs relatively high nitrogen compared to phosphorus and potassium. A typical ratio might be 3:1:2. A flowering crop, on the other hand, needs less nitrogen and more phosphorus and potassium as it transitions from vegetative growth to reproduction. A ratio like 1:3:2 might be appropriate. Using a high nitrogen fertilizer on a flowering crop can delay or prevent flowering because the plant stays in vegetative mode. Using a high phosphorus bloom formula on young seedlings that need nitrogen for leaf development stunts growth. The ratio has to match the crop's needs at that specific growth stage. This is why professional growers often use different fertilizer formulas throughout the growing cycle, adjusting ratios as the crop develops. Balance and timing matter more than simply applying the highest concentration fertilizer you can find. Different crops have fundamentally different nutrient requirements. A lettuce plant and a tomato plant don't eat the same way. Leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, and kale are all about vegetative growth. They never flower or fruit. We harvest them before that happens. These crops need consistent, relatively high nitrogen throughout their life cycle to produce tender, fast-growing leaves. Phosphorus and potassium are still important, but nitrogen is the star. Fruiting crops like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and melons have a two-phase life. Early on, they need good nitrogen to build a strong vegetative framework, a plant with lots of leaves to power photosynthesis. But once flowering begins, nitrogen needs to be moderated while phosphorus and potassium increase to support flower and fruit development. Too much nitrogen during fruiting delays maturity and produces lots of leaves but fewer fruits. Root crops like carrots, beets, and potatoes need balanced nutrition early. But as they develop their storage organs, they benefit from higher potassium and lower nitrogen. Too much nitrogen on root crops produces lots of leafy top growth, but small, poorly developed roots. Even within categories, there are differences. Blueberries need very acidic conditions and specialized fertilizers. Brassicas need extra sulfur and boron. Understanding crop-specific needs allows you to tailor your fertilization program, giving each crop exactly what it needs when it needs it for optimal growth and quality. Here's a truth that surprises many growers. More fertilizer is not always better. In fact, Overfertilization is one of the most common and most damaging mistakes in plant production. When you apply too much fertilizer, several bad things happen. First, you get salt buildup in the soil or growing medium. Remember that fertilizers are salts. Excessive salts create osmotic stress, pulling water out of roots and causing dehydration. Leaf margins burn and turn brown. Growth slows or stops. Second, overfertilization can cause nutrient lockout. When one nutrient is present in excessive amounts, it can interfere with the uptake of other nutrients. Too much potassium can block magnesium uptake. Excessive phosphorus can tie up zinc and iron. You end up with deficiency symptoms even though you're adding tons of fertilizer. Third, overfertilization stimulates lush, weak growth that's highly susceptible to pests and diseases. Aphids and other sap-sucking insects love nitrogen-rich, tender tissues. Fungal diseases find easy entry through soft growth. Fourth, excess fertilizer leaches into groundwater or runs off into surface water, causing environmental pollution. Algae blooms, dead zones, and contaminated drinking water are all linked to agricultural nutrient runoff. And finally, overfertilization wastes money. Fertilizer is expensive. Applying more than plants can use is literally flushing money down the drain. The goal should be sufficiency, not excess. Feed plants what they need, no more, no less. Use soil or tissue testing to guide applications. Monitor plant response. Dial in your program to hit that sweet spot where plants are healthy and productive without waste or stress. As we look toward the future, plant nutrition is getting smarter. Technology is transforming how we feed crops. Sensors embedded in soil or growing media can continuously monitor moisture, temperature, EC, and even individual nutrient levels. This real-time data feeds into computer systems that automatically adjust fertigation to maintain optimal conditions. No more guessing. No more over-fertilizing, because you're not sure if the last application was enough. The system knows exactly what's in a root zone and delivers exactly what's needed. Artificial intelligence and machine learning take this further. AI systems analyze sensor data along with weather forecasts, crop growth models, and historical performance to predict nutrient needs days or weeks in advance. These systems learn from each growing cycle, continuously refining their recommendations. Some systems use drones or satellite imagery to detect nutrient stress before it's visible to the human eye. Multispectral imaging can identify changes in leaf color and reflectance that indicate deficiencies or imbalances. Growers can then apply targeted fertilizer only where needed, creating prescription maps for variable rate application. This precision agriculture approach reduces input costs, minimizes environmental impact, and maximizes crop quality. We're also seeing advances in sustainable nutrient sources. Biochar, composted organic amendments, and slow-release fertilizers reduce leaching and extend nutrient availability. Research into biostimulants and beneficial microbes is unlocking ways to improve nutrient uptake efficiency without simply adding more fertilizer. The future of plant nutrition is about working smarter, not harder, using technology, biology, and data to deliver exactly the right nutrients at exactly the right time and exactly the right amounts. It's precision, it's sustainability, and it's already happening on forward-thinking farms around the world. And that wraps up our second section. We've explored how plants show us when nutrition is off, why some deficiencies appear in old leaves and others in new growth, the differences between soil and soilless systems, the importance of chelation, the role of microbes in nutrient cycling, the precision of fertigation, why nutrient ratios matter more than concentrations, how different crops need different feeding strategies, the dangers of over-fertilization, and where technology is taking plant nutrition in the future. These concepts build on the fundamentals we covered earlier, giving you a deeper understanding of how to manage plant nutrition effectively across different systems and crops.